how you can sell your premium value services without negotiating price. We'll get you set up to be better prepared to be able to sell what you sell for the value it represents rather than an arbitrary price that your potential clients or you have placed on it. And that's what we're going to focus on today. This is actually part 2 of a series that we started several weeks ago, maybe almost a month ago. We talked in part 1 about how to sell your premium value services without negotiating price. I shared a bit of my story about how we came to realize that what we were doing was negotiating wrong. And we had to make some of those changes so that we were negotiating on value, not on price. Welcome to this free training on how to sell your premium value services without negotiating price. How we can focus on selling value versus price. And what we find ourselves is often getting in a trap of having to negotiate the price that we are offering the client in exchange for what we're selling. And what often happens in that situation is we're not offering an exchange of price for value. The client or the potential client perceives that we're offering an exchange of price for stuff, price for activities, price for tasks, price for busyness. And whenever a potential client perceives that what they're buying is what you're going to do for them, they're going to want to negotiate on price. So here's what I'm going to ask you today. I'm going to ask you to start by thinking about how many of you sell premium value services or solutions to your clients. How many of you also have clients who have asked you to change your price? They never ask us to raise it. So I'm asking you, how many of you have had clients who've actually asked you to reduce your price once you've made an offer to them for the price for your solutions or services? This happens quite often, and there's lots of reasons why it happens. And in part 1, we talked about some of the reasons why it happened. And today in part 2, we're going to focus on how we priced it is influencing the perception of our clients and what they think they have to negotiate with us. Are any of you familiar with the difference between taking notes and making notes? If you are, just kind of say yes or put your thoughts in comment. Let me describe to you the difference. Taking notes is when you hear what someone's saying to you and you're writing down what they've said. I've said to you today that we're going to talk about how to sell your premium value offerings or solutions or services without having to negotiate price. Making notes is when you are writing down mentally and physically what you plan to do with what you've heard, how you plan to apply what you've heard to your business, your work, your opportunity, your client relationships. Don't just take notes about some good ideas that you heard about. I would like you to also make your own notes. Start to think about, how can I apply what I am hearing to my current situations with my business, right? I'm going to share a framework with you that will help you to price your solutions and services in a way that expresses the value that you're offering versus the cost to the potential client. There's a big difference between pricing to sell for value and costing out something and then selling it at cost. When we cost something out, when we pull out a spreadsheet and say, what would it cost us to do this? And then we have a total at the bottom of a spreadsheet and hand it over to someone, we basically presented a cost to them, not a price for value exchange. And I'm going to introduce a framework to you that we use that helps prevent us from getting in that situation. With your permission, I'd like to start by helping you understand how we got there at P31. How did we get to the point that we recognized that we were actually not selling based on price for value? We were actually selling based on costs that we thought were a fair exchange for what we were delivering. So I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself. Do you want to sell your premium services as premium services, or do you want to compete on price? We were finding that we had these great services, some of them valued at $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. This is early in our business when we just started building it up. And what we found ourselves doing was We were always having this conversation with price with our clients. Have you all ever been there? They're going through the proposal. They're going through everything you discussed and they're saying, do we really need to do that? And do we really need to do this? Or can you do this instead? Maybe in a competitive bid, they're comparing your proposal to another. That's what was happening to us. They were pulling out a proposal from a competitor, or they were pulling out a proposal from a prior bid for some similar services. They were putting them side by side, and then they were asking us if we could change things. What was happening there was they were asking us to negotiate the price, to compete on price, not what we were offering that was going to help to transform their business. They were asking us to discount. They weren't talking about the value. We weren't talking about the value. They weren't talking about the potential relationship benefit. We weren't talking about the potential relationship benefit. And we had to make a decision. How are we going to compete? Are we going to compete on the fact that we've got premium value services, or are we going to focus on price? One of the first situations that really helped us recognize what we were doing wrong was we pulled a spreadsheet out and we would estimate what the cost would be based on a number that we had that we valued our hourly rate or our day rate at. And we would make a list of all the tasks and all the activities that were required to be done in order for us to be successful in delivering what the client or the potential client was asking for. And then we would make this long spreadsheet. Sometimes it had 50 rows of tasks and activities. Sometimes it had 100 or 150. But ultimately, at the bottom of that spreadsheet, guess what there was? There was a number. This is what it's going to cost us to do this work for the client or the potential client. So this is the number we're going to propose to them in exchange for what we're going to deliver to them. Here's what we started to discover. We were having the same conversations over and over again. The client was going through and picking apart our proposals, which, by the way, had a lot of the details around the activities and the tasks that we were going to be delivering. Basically, we were presenting this a la carte menu. Now, even though the a la carte menu didn't have our price listed next to each task or activity, the client was smart enough to basically look at the list of tasks and activities and say to themselves, well, what do I think this would cost? How long do I think this would take them to do? How much would I be willing to pay for this? And the client would basically go through and say, can we remove this? Can we still get this done if we don't do this? Can we still make this happen even if we don't do these three things? That's when we started realizing we were having that same conversation over and over and over again. There was something going wrong. We were wondering, why is the client so focused on how we're going to get the work done and not as focused on the value they're going to receive, the benefits they're going to get, and how their business will be better off? First, we thought it's the way we're talking about it. Yes, it was. We were focused a lot on, look at all the things we're going to be doing to help you out. Look at all the things we're going to be doing that's going to help make you better off. We were focused on what was going to be done, all the details and all the work that we're going to do to get you where you want to be. And so that was one of the mistakes we made. And we went, okay, we got to stop doing that. We need to focus our conversations more on the benefits, more on the value of our work. And let's stop talking so much about all the things that need to be done, because they're going to focus on that as well. We kind of said, okay, we won't do this anymore. But then we said, well, let's go back and figure out, why are we focused so much on the activities and the details? Why do we feel the need to impress upon the client that we're doing a lot of work and this work has value? Value meaning a price. This work has a cost associated with it, and we can't deliver what you're asking for without recouping these costs. Why were we talking like that to the client? Then we went back and said, let's look at our entire process. Let's look at how we are thinking about how we get to the price that we're going to offer the client. Do you think about, well, how do I get to the price where I offer the client? Some of you will say yes, and some of you will go, no, I don't really think about how I do it. I just do it. So here's my second question for you. Do you have a way that you cost out what you're planning to sell so that you can say, this is what my time is worth, and this is how much time it's going to take me to do this. Therefore, this is the price I'm going to charge the client. That is a commodity-based wet pricing way of thinking. We had a commodity pricing mindset. Commodity basically means that someone can pick up your list of all the things that you do and has a price list next to it, and they can pick up someone else's price list that lists all those same things, and there's a price associated with it. And whichever price is lower is the one I'm going to choose. Why? Because the lists are the same. And we were looking at this as costing. And I almost want to call it commodity costing, because when we're talking about selling solutions or services, we're talking about costing out our time. And there's a concept of a way of pricing in business called time and materials or fixed price. Time and materials means I'm going to cost out what it's going to take for me to get this work done based on my time, how much of my time and the value I place on my time, my hourly rate or my day rate, plus any materials I need to pay for or acquire in order to get the work done. That's costing. And then there's something called fixed price, when you're offering a fixed price for services or for solutions. That's what we do when we're developing training programs or coaching programs. We say we will do the program for $50,000, for example. We don't break down how we're going to design the program, how we're going to do the assessment. We don't give them a breakdown of all the details of all the things that we need to do about designing the learning objectives, getting the teaching objectives in place, designing the content, procuring content, sources, getting the references. We don't put all that in there. We just say, here's the cost for this program based on the outcomes that you need. Do you want to invest? The time and materials way of thinking is a costing mindset versus the fixed price way of costing things is thinking more about value. We were blending this commodity mindset, this costing, this time and materials, and we were kind of forcing it in to be a fixed price. They just saw a number, but we knew what it was, and there was no difference between time and materials for fixed cost. So that's the second thing we discovered. We were costing our premium value services using a commodity-based mindset, which is time, materials, and it's a list of activities that someone can compare with someone else's similar list and ask which one is going to offer the better price. Because if I think they offer equal experience, expertise, they're both equally good. So we looked back at that and it was like, check mark, there's another thing we're doing wrong. And then we got to the third thing. And this is the thing that turned it all around for us. This is when we discovered the big mistake that we were making and the change that we had to make right away. And that is, we started looking at that costing sheet and we decided it wasn't going to be our costing sheet anymore. We decided that we were going to start to look at what is the outcome, what is the business outcome, and what is the value that the potential client perceives they actually need in order for this procuring services for it to be successful. And then we started to ask ourselves, we need to be able to put a price on that. How much are we saving them by doing what we're doing? Or how much more money are they going to earn as a result of this? Sometimes it was not just revenue, money. Sometimes it was time. How much more time are they going to save as a result of using the solution that we're providing? What kind of things will they no longer need to do that are costing them time? And any time in business there's time, there's an associated cost with that time. Simply because we were thinking that way, we were able to easily articulate what we were going to be doing for them to get them to a better place. But we were spending so much time talking about what we would be doing for them because the costing sheet was driving us to think that way, that we weren't having conversations with the client about how our unique value was going to put them in a better place in a way that they could not compare us with anyone else. So once we discovered that, guess what we did? We went back to our spreadsheet and guess what? I have it right here. I don't know if you can see my tablet. I have the spreadsheet right here. We use it all the time. All of the leaders in our company have a copy of our spreadsheet. It's our premium value spreadsheet, not a costing sheet. And the difference between that sheet, that spreadsheet that we use versus the spreadsheet that we used years ago, it has new components to it. It has new elements to it. It has rows for value. It has rows for things like contingency. Right. It has new rows of other types of costs. And again, I'm using that loosely, that influence the overall price when you're talking about the value to the organization and what you're going to be delivering to them. And so what we also discovered through this process, once we set up this new spreadsheet, right, we actually brought in someone who her name is Anne. She heads our Canadian business. She came in with some brilliance, having worked for a management consultancy, and said, I've looked at your sheets and you're missing this, and you're missing this, and you're missing this, and you're missing this. And guess what? We started putting those rows in and we were like, how did we miss those things? So not only were we not costing accurately because we missed some critical components like contingencies for different situations, Most really good consultants or salespeople have a contingency line. But what we hadn't done was break down the different types of contingencies and what were unique contingencies about this situation with this particular client and this particular business outcome they were desiring, and with these particular people we were working with within that organization. The contingencies we had to build in for that are very different with a different group of people within the same organization working on a different project with different business outcomes. It's completely different. And I know you'd like to think it is the same, but it's not. We had a situation once where there was a client who was expecting, she was pregnant and she was expecting to deliver right around the time we were going to finish the project. Here's a contingency we had to build in. We had to anticipate that she might go early. She might actually deliver her child early. If she had delivered her child early, guess what that would mean? They were going to have to put someone else in place to cover for her for the rest of the project. That meant new reorientation of that person, right? They need to be reoriented to the project. They needed to be oriented or reoriented to the project. They needed to be given an overview of what had been done and where we were and what the person who left was going to be expecting as an outcome when she did come back after having her baby. All of these were unique contingencies that we had to build into our costing model, right? And we didn't even get to premium value yet. But we put these in the spreadsheet, and we have placeholder lines right now in our spreadsheet for unique contingencies that are unique for that particular client. So if you have a solution or a service and it brings each client unique value, you should not be selling it for the same price. Because if it's bringing unique value, you should be able to attach value to every single thing that you're offering them in there. And that every single thing has got to be unique. In fact, you want to make sure you are attaching value on your side of the equation, not in the presence of the client, value to everything that you are offering them. So when you go down that spreadsheet, each task has a price associated with it. Guess what else it has? It has value. It has a value statement. We can express the value of every activity and every task that we are delivering to the client or proposing to the client. How many of you have a value proposition for your company or the products or services that you sell? Wouldn't you like to be able to, when the client starts to look at your proposal as though it's an a la carte menu, wouldn't you like to be able to say, let me explain to you why this is so critical for the success of the work we'll be doing for you? This one step, this one task, this one activity, this key milestone. That's why it's so, so critical that you're able to not only craft these proposals, do your pricing with all the activities that you're going to do, but you also need to be able to say, I know, and I'm confident as the person who's offering this to you, that there is value in every single step that we do. Sometimes when I review proposals for people, I'll ask them, why are you doing this step? Tell me the value to the client, not the value to you as a team doing it. What is the value to the client for you having done this? And you know what? Almost 100% of the time, there's at least one or two items they can't tell me. They can't tell me. They're like, I know why we need to do it, but I can't tell you what the value is to the client. Well, you've got to be able to tell the value to the client. Otherwise, the client's going to look at your proposal like an a la carte menu, and they're going to start striking off the things that they don't want and checking the things that they do want. And by being able to identify what the value is for each unique activity that you do, as well as the overall value of why and how they are going to be better off because you did the work for them in your unique way, with your unique methodologies and services, with the unique value you've attached to each step in the process that you do. What you're doing there is you are crafting a unique value proposition for each individual client. The clients want to hear about what you can do for them. They want to hear about what is so unique and wonderful about them. I used to have a value proposition at P31. We had a value proposition page in our proposals. And what I have done is I started to ask clients, do you read the value proposition pages? And you know what they told me? No. Part of the reason they don't look is because we put them at the end. Another reason they don't look at them is because they say, we've seen these before. And we can tell that you just lifted and copied and pasted this from another proposal that you proposed to someone else. And our situation is not their situation. So we're not really interested in your generic value proposition. We'd like to know what you are going to offer us that's unique for us, because we have a unique business problem that needs a unique business solution that's going to have a unique business outcome. Therefore, we need unique methods. We need unique approaches. You need to have unique experience and expertise that aligns with our unique needs, and we need unique benefits. That is what the clients want to hear. They need a unique value proposition for each proposal, not copy paste. I would challenge you, go back and look at your proposals and see if there's anything in there that really is not relevant. I used to have a client, actually our company had a client, and we used to come in and do a program where we reviewed their proposals and we would kind of give them some feedback and coaching on where they needed to make some changes. I remember I was reading a proposal and there was a standard, and Kate says sometimes the value proposition is at the end. They had it right at the beginning, but they also had a page that said, we work in 100 countries around the world. They had this beautiful graphic of, different countries, and they had stars all over the world so you could see the pins of where they worked. But guess what? The proposal was for work they needed done in New Jersey. Imagine. And so what I said to them was, you're proposing work for something unique that has to do with New Jersey healthcare systems. Why do you have a picture of the world? And you know what the response is? Because we want them to know we have so much experience all over the world, and that makes us more qualified. I said, actually, it makes you less qualified and it makes you look more expensive. Can you see how that would make them look that way? I said, you need to strip this out. The client was thinking, why is this here? Your potential clients have a limited amount of time to review the materials that they have. And they were wondering, why is that there? Why is this page in my way at the beginning of the proposal when I need to get the meat of the what are you going to do for me that's unique for me, given my unique business situation, my unique business outcomes I desire, the benefits I need, the place I need to be that's going to put me in a better place than where I am now. They didn't see that in their proposal. And until I coached this group on how to do this, they hadn't seen it either. They thought it was impressive to show every client everything they've ever done. When you start to do that, and when you start to sell on value, guess what? You end up having so much power. Your power comes back because you have power in the relationship. You have power and confidence in what you're selling. You have power behind the scenes because you're not scrambling. How are we going to make these adjustments for the client? How are we going to make it work out? That's not a place of power. That's a place of confusion and doubt. And so when you're selling on value, and actually, I don't like the word selling. You're either doing consultative selling, which I'm a little bit more comfortable with. What we do at P31 is we help our clients to make good buying decisions. So that means instead of being across the table from them and selling to them, I'm going to sit on the same side of the table with them. And I'm going to look at this opportunity through their lenses. And I'm going to help them to make a good buying decision for them. Because if I'm thinking about it through their lenses, guess what's going to likely happen? I'll probably make some changes. There's some things I might propose differently the more I get to learn about how they think about the situation. And guess what else might happen? I might conclude that what I was originally planning to propose to them, or what I'm sharing with them, is actually not in their best interest. I am perfectly comfortable, and so are the leaders at P31. We're perfectly comfortable walking away and saying, we don't think we're the right partner for you in this particular situation. We'll offer to find someone who is, if we know of someone, but we're very comfortable saying, we want you to be successful, and we don't think we're the right one. In fact, I just had a conversation with a client about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. We were talking and she called me because she has experience with me. And she said, I'd like to hire you to do this. I have these 2 projects. I want you to do Project A and Project B. My first thought in my mind was Project B can definitely handle that. That's an area we have expertise and we can really help their organization achieve their goals. Project A, I wasn't so confident that we were the right group. At least I wasn't the right person to help her. And I said to her, while I appreciate your confidence in my ability to help you here, I don't think that I'm the best person to help you here. And she said, I think you are. She said, I think you are. I've known you for years. I've worked with you a lot. I've hired you a lot. I think you are. and I know that you can do this for me. And as confident as she was, I insisted that I was not, because it was in an area that I know, but I'm not an expert. And I really felt in this situation, and I turned it around. I sat on the side of the table with her and I said, let's look at this situation and let's look at what your actual needs are based on the way you describe them to me. And let's look at the outcomes you need and the speed at which you need them. And then I said, Tish can't give you that. And here are the reasons why. It's going to take longer. You probably won't get exactly the outcomes. You'll get good outcomes, but you're not going to get great outcomes. And she agreed. And she said, who do you recommend? And so I came up with a couple of names and we moved on from there. But the point is, we have to be in a position, we are helping them make good buying decisions based on the value that we're selling so that we don't have to negotiate price. We never, ever, ever want to negotiate price. What do you think we want to negotiate? Because it's not price. It's not price. That's not where you want to focus your time and attention. Yes, outcomes, value. Here's why you want to negotiate value. Because if there is truly value in everything that you're doing, every detail, every task, every activity, in addition to the overall that you'll be able to deliver, it's not likely that you'll ever have a client say no to your price because they will see so much value. You can't compare the proposal that we're giving to you to anyone else's. I say that verbally. I say, because if you find yourself comparing them, please come back to me and have a conversation, because I am 100% sure we are proposing oranges for you. And if you can compare all of the other proposals that you receive, they're all apples. We believe you need an orange. And if you think everybody else thinks you need the same apple, they haven't done their work to think about what you really need. Think about how much power there is in that statement I just made, right? There's a lot of power in that statement. Please don't compare us to the other proposals, because it's not likely you'll be able to do that, because we're not going to be proposing something everyone else is going to be proposing. And you need to be able to have the confidence of doing that. And that's why I say, if you find yourself comparing ours to theirs, then please come back to me and tell me what you're seeing in ours that looks exactly like theirs. It never happens. They never bring it back and tell us it looks exactly the same. But what they do sometimes say is, the other company proposed this and this, but you didn't propose that. And then my response is, what value did they tell you you would receive as a result of doing those things? Tell me more about that. Tell me more about the value you would see in having us do that. Notice I said in having us do that, not comparing myself to the competition. It's so important. And all of this goes back to moving away from having a commodity pricing mindset, just stepping away from that and stepping into, I bring value. We bring value. Our solutions bring value. And that's when we step away from that and we're able to say, I will never, ever use a commodity pricing mindset again to price my premium value solutions and services. We had a client who asked us to do a fairly large project. When we first came in with the proposal, we did our costing sheet. And this is at the time we were transitioning into the value, really thinking about value. Do we really know the value of everything we're going to do? So our costing sheet wasn't completely, the column on value wasn't completely filled out, but we had lots of conversations around it. We proposed what we thought the price would be. I think it was $130,000 or $150,000, something like that. But here's the mistake we made. Our proposal was still written with a focus on the tasks and the activities. Even though we had included value, it was still really heavily focused on all the tasks and activities that we were going to do. And we hadn't really perfected this system that we have now in the framework I'm going to show you. We hadn't perfected that yet. So we still kind of wrote the proposals in the same way, but now they had a value flavor to them. I would call it that. We put a little flavor of value in there. So while the proposal was solid, it was a competitive bid. We had to go through several rounds. They narrowed it down to 3 potential partners they would bring in to do this work for them. And so we knew it was a competitive bid. We had to go in and defend the bid. Defending a bid, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is when you have to go in and actually present your proposal to a group of people and basically defend it in any way you needed to based on questions that they ask you. And they were doing bid defenses for all 3 of the finalists. So we went through that process. We were sure we nailed it. We were sure we had done well. We felt very confident about what was going to happen next. And then all of a sudden, they came back to us and said, the other 2 vendors said they can do it for less. We thought, do what for less? because what we proposed can't be done for less. We didn't say that out loud, but we talked to each other about it. And we said, tell us more. What is it that the other vendors are proposing that they can do for less? And then they said, well, we don't think it's appropriate for us to discuss what the other vendors propose. And we said, okay, that's perfectly, you're ethical. We weren't asking you to share their proposals. We absolutely were not. We were asking to understand where you were seeing the differences. So what we did instead was we said we were going to write a letter to them in the form of an email where we were highlighting what the outcomes were. We were going to highlight the value of what they were going to get short and long term as a result of our solution, and how nothing that we included in that proposal could be removed, because if it was removed, they would not get the outcome they needed. And so we inferred in our cover note that if anyone has not included these other things in their proposal, we didn't say it explicitly, but if they have not included these things with these value attached to it, you're not going to get any of that value, because they didn't build the things in that were going to give you that value. Guess what? We won the bid. But here's what happened. Here's what happened. They came back to us and said, we don't have that much budget. They were a small company. They had a budget. They were committed to what they were doing, but they just didn't have any more. And we said, well, if you want those outcomes, you're not going to be able to get those outcomes. So you're going to have to make a decision on which components of this work we're going to do, you're going to defer. Because you're saying you don't have the budget this year, but if you would like to defer it to the future, to next year or a future year, we're happy to do that. But you will have to decide what you think would be best for you to defer. And then guess what they did next? They asked us what we thought they should defer. Wow. Now that was amazing, right? To have the client come back to you and say, well, we trust you. How can we do this? How should we do this? That's the thing that was amazing, is that they asked us and then we told them, here's what we think the highest priority items are. You've got to do these now, because they set the foundation for the things to come. Those things that we're going to follow on, we can defer those until next year. And if you would like, we can give you an idea of what your investment, not price. The word investment is critical. What your investment will be, because think about it, the difference between the word price and investment. Price is what someone pays to someone else, right? It's an amount they're going to give to someone else. An investment is something someone makes for themselves. We actually don't have a pricing page in our proposals. We have an investment page. And our statement says, for this investment, you will get. For your investment of this amount, you will receive. Value. So investment and the return on that investment, and this client saw it. They saw the investment, and we said, take this part out and invest in this later. By the way, they did all of this, and they were a client for many, many years until they were bought by some big company. But anyway, they did what we recommended. We won that opportunity. But here's the thing. They tried very hard to get us to give them everything for the lower price. Because once we came back and said, defer this, here's what the cost of that will be, do this now. Then they came back and said, well, can't you just give us all for this? And we just said no. We said no. We didn't say a hard no like I just said. We said, let us explain to you why that's not possible to do all of this for this investment and in this time. It's not possible. They agreed. They ended up investing the first $100,000 in the first year. We got all that rolling. It was extremely successful. It was a global project, and they were excited to pay us the next time around. They were excited to make an investment with us versus other people who they could have made an investment with. So I hope that you can see the value in that. And I want to give you an example of where someone who's in our coaching program right now just closed a deal 2 weeks ago, using our pricing premium value pricing framework. She basically didn't have our spreadsheet I told you about, but let me tell you what she did have. We had a coaching session with her. Let me give you the background on this. She had never sold anything for a fixed price. Everything she had ever sold was what we call time and materials. So she gave them an hourly rate or a day rate. She contracted to do the work. She estimated how many hours per week it would take over X number of weeks. The client agreed to that. That was the cap. No more hours than that. She worked to those hours. So she was working to hours, not working to outcomes. She was working to hours, not working to value. Do you hear the difference? And so that's what she did. And when she came into our coaching program just a month or two, maybe 2 months ago, she actually said, I've never I've never sold anything for a fixed price. I've only ever sold my time. And she said in our coaching session, I don't know how to do it that way. I wouldn't even know how to price it. So now let's complicate this a little bit more. She came up with a new concept, an innovative solution for her industry that no one has done yet. No one had done it yet. So not only had she never priced a premium value solution, she didn't know how to price this one because no one had ever done it before. She had no idea how to do it. She was saying, I have no idea how to do this because, and we said, well, what are your benchmarks? What are other businesses doing that are selling similar items? She said, no one's selling it. This is an innovation. I've innovated this and I need to take it to them because I think everybody in the industry needs it. She said, but I got to sell the first one. And remember, this is just a month or so ago. So we got on the phone, we worked with her, and I said, we didn't have time to give her the sheet that we used, our framework, our premium value pricing sheet. But I described it to her. I said, here's what I need you to do. And I described everything that was in the worksheet. Everything was there. And you need to make sure you have a value associated with each of these. And when you transfer that into your proposal should not list all of your tasks and activities, because never do that because you're giving away your methodology. You never want to give away your methodology because they could lift your proposal, hand it to someone else and say, would you be willing to do this for us? We didn't want that to happen to her. We said, don't give away your methodology. Don't give away how you're going to get it done. Just say that you have a method and you have an approach that will enable you to get it done. You highlight some of the key tasks, some of the key activities that absolutely must be done, and the value of having you do it. Not the value for the task, but the value of having you do those tasks, not the value of having someone else do those tasks. Because that's when you get to start to weave in your experience and your qualifications and how you're the only people qualified to do that. That's how you really help the client see the value that you can bring. So she did this sheet. She used the guidance that we had given her. She didn't think she was going to be selling anything before the end of the year. She thought her solution was so innovative that it would take some time to persuade people that this is something that they needed, but she knew that they needed it. She went out a few days later and gave it a shot and sold it. She is going to be innovating the entire industry that she's in. And wait. I just got to read the email that we got from her. I hope I have this open. Yeah, let me read. I have it open because I like to look at it. It's good news. I'm going to have to keep her anonymous in here, and I'm going to have to not read every word, or we'll give away what her innovative solution is. So, hi Tish, hi Ian. We were the two in the coaching session with her. Just a quick note to say that I've won my first fixed fee project on the innovative solution. Tish, I costed it up carefully, broadly following what we discussed a couple of weeks ago, and the client didn't argue with it at all. Listen to that. I built in contingency and some other fees that we told her about that were important to build into it. She emphasized the benefits of the benefits of the benefits of the benefits. And the benefits of the benefits of the benefits is something we're going to be teaching next week in a program that we're going to offer you an opportunity to participate in, which goes to the value and the outcomes. And she said, here's the thing that's beautiful about her email. I'm so pleased, as this is the first time I've gone out to get the type of work I'd like to do, rather than simply reacting to what people have asked me to do. Think about that. Often when we're first building our businesses, we'll go out and take anything. Have any of you done that? Have any of you just taken a job because someone said yes? Like the client said, yes, I'll hire you. And you were like, okay. And you really didn't think about, do I really want to do this? Is this something I want to do a long time? Have you ever done that? You were just so excited to have the opportunity. You just said, okay, let me do this. Sometimes we do that at the beginning. We do that at the very beginning. And I'm going to write yes in chat because I have, and I'm going to participate in this. I'm going to admit I have. Yeah, I definitely have. I felt that I needed the work, right? I needed the work. I needed the opportunity. I needed the experience. I'm just going to take anything that comes my way. Let's not do that anymore, right? Let's agree. Let's hold each other accountable. We're not going to do that anymore. I just gave you a great story about someone who joined our coaching program in September. Within a few weeks, used everything she learned in her weekly coaching. She didn't even have our spreadsheet yet. We hadn't even gotten to that point in coaching. I had described the spreadsheet to her, and I had said, make sure you put rows in for this, 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 and that. Make sure you have a value assigned to everything. She did it, and she put a proposal together. They didn't even negotiate. They said yes. Why? Because even with just a month of coaching, and she'd never done this before, they saw the value that she was going to be bringing to their organization. And they saw how they were going to be better off because they worked with her solution in the way that she proposed for them to achieve their business outcomes and to get the value that they needed for their organization, short and long term. Think about that. That is like such a wow to me. It's just such a wow to me. And I do want to share with you how we help people to do this beyond these webinars, which we've started to do in the last few months. And we're going to continue to share these with you free, and we're going to push them out to YouTube. We won't be pushing all of them out to YouTube, but we'll be pushing several of them out to YouTube so that you have access to these. And you can hear, I've told you what you need to do, why you need to do it, and when you need to do it, right? You're ready to go. And I can see by some of the comments in chat, you're ready to do this thing. Because you can. And we know you can do this. We know that you can change it. It's a change of thinking. Don't think commodity pricing mindset. Think premium value pricing. Get out of the commodity pricing mindset. And if you ever see yourself thinking that way, oh, what is it going to cost? What is it going to cost? What is it going to cost? If you hear yourself saying that, you're already there. That's okay for step one, but step one can't happen without step two if you want to talk about value. What is the value to the client and the potential client of us doing each of these things? But we don't share each of those things in the proposal. People like you who are trying to make these changes, you're trying to grow your business through more clients and through more revenue and income. We're all in business to make money. Let's not pretend, unless you're in a nonprofit, you're not there to be profitable. For the rest of us who are building businesses, I want to serve. I want to bring the best of myself to what I do. I want to bring my knowledge. I want to bring my experience in. I want to bring all that I am and that I've become and that I've learned in the years of doing work to help my clients to be successful, to get some of their time back, to make more money for their business. I want the independent consultants and the small business owners to have more time with their families, so they're working less and earning more. I want the big corporations that I'm working with, so their people are working more efficiently, more smartly, and the company's making more money. They are achieving the outcomes that they need. They are more profitable. I want to do all of those things, but we're all in business to have successful businesses. And we had one situation, I just want to caution you on this one. We had one situation where a client, we were in a competitive bid for a leadership program. We were designing a leadership program for a major global organization, and it was competitive. So several contractors potentially or partners submitted bids, and we were one of two finalists. So we made it through many stages. We got to the final two, and we had what we would call a coach. That's a person who wanted us to win the bid, right? So we had someone inside who wanted us to win. And that person's manager had started to like what we proposed and said, I actually think they'll do the best job. It turns out that the other company who was bidding was friends with the CEO of the company, the CEO of a global company. And so the CEO's voice was pretty well respected, and people were going to do what he said. So the CEO was saying, I know you have two good final bids in, but I would really like to recommend my friend, right? So, but here's what happened. One day, I was actually in England. I'll never forget this. I was teaching a class, and I got an email that came through during one of the breaks. I opened the email, and this client for the leadership program was in the United States. I'd received an email from her, and in the email, it said, here is the proposal from the other company. Can you do what they're proposing? What do you think I did? What do you think I should have done? Someone sent me another company's proposal in a competitive bid. If you're afraid to put in chat what you think I should have done, I'm going to tell you what I did. I deleted the email. It was unethical. It would have been unethical for me to have read that email to look at that proposal. I would have never wanted my competition to look at my proposal. I am not going to win an opportunity to work with a client based on unethical behaviors. And the reason I'm sharing this with you, because the reason she was sharing it with me is she wanted me to look at the list of all the things they said they were going to do. She wanted to see if we could pull some of their a la carte menu items that weren't in our proposal and push it in there and then say, look what we can do. But we didn't. What we did was I deleted the email right away. I didn't open it. I deleted the email. I told my business partner who I was working with what had happened. And then I sent her a separate email telling her that we were going to be withdrawing our bid from the process. And if she felt that the other company had a better solution, that we understand her desire to work with them. Now, that's not what she had said, right? But that's the way I responded. So just consider that another potential risk of a la carting your approach to the way you write your proposal, even though you're not putting a price next to every item. It can read like an a la carte proposal, even though you don't put a price. So one of the potential risks is somebody could take it and hand it off. And it does happen, and it's sad that it happens. And I'm sure our proposals have been handed off to other people too. That's why we never disclose everything we're going to do. We'd never disclose our methodology. We only highlight key tasks, key activities. We do not disclose our entire methodology because it's too likely that lift can happen. And that lift happens when the client thinks from a commodity perspective as well. So let me get to the fun part. I want to tell you about as we conclude this, some of the things that we've got going on for you. Here's final thoughts for you. Warren Buffett says, price is what you pay, value is what you get. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. Remember that. That's what people want. They want the value. William Ury, who works with the Harvard School of Negotiation, was co-author of a number of best-selling books like Getting to Yes and others. The best negotiators don't focus on negotiating price. They focus on value. Now, you heard what Warren Buffett said. You heard William Ury said. Here's what I say. Value, not price, period. When you go in with that mindset where you're valuing value and not price, you have an opportunity to change the world that your client is in. Because when you value the value, you can help them to value the value. And they won't look at the price. The price will be an irrelevant part of the conversation. Budget is different, but price will not be something they will want to have a conversation with you about because they will see so much value in what you're bringing. So remember, value, not the price. Okay, here's one of my favorite quotes. It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Let's modify that. It's impossible for a person to learn what he or she thinks they already know, right? If you think you already know it, this program's not for you. If you know there's more that you could do that's greater and better to take your business to the next level, this program is for you. And we invite you to join us on the journey. What we found is that people who are most successful in business don't think they have all the answers. That's why I love this quote. It's a reminder to myself that if I think I already know, I'm not going to grow. If I think there's no one can teach me anything, I'm not going to grow. So I'm inviting you, those of you who want to grow, to join us next week. But as we wrap up, I want to give you a couple of things to think about. Here's my summary of my thoughts as we've been going through this. Remember how important it is to value each activity and only negotiate on value. If the client wants to remove something because they don't have the budgets, for example, ask them which piece of value is least important to them right now, but never say that it's not important, period. Because it is. You won't propose it unless it's important. Remember, when you're talking to the client, I'm going to give you a final tip before we go. And I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget to tell you. Make sure you're clear on what the client loses by taking any of those activities and value out. See, one thing, the first way I told you to talk about it was about the value, what happens, but make sure they're clear on what will not happen. What is the loss to them of removing it? That's a way to make sure we're actually removing the least important things, or they're not even least important, the lowest priority. Priority means important, right? But there's a list of things in which is the lowest priority. And whenever a client asks for you to lower the price, here's my tip, and I always do this: always ask what's driving the request. That will get you to the truth and the heart of the matter. I always ask what's driving the request. Sometimes they'll say it's budget. Sometimes it's just because they think they're supposed to ask you for less. They think that's a part of the process. I would argue with that. Negotiating price is not a part of the process. Even though they will tell you that, they are wrong. And they are wrong because they are telling you that because they're doing it from a selfish perspective. And quite frankly, we're in business to have relationships with people that we hopefully enjoy working with, that they appreciate the value we bring to them. And if they really truly appreciate the value that we're bringing to them, they won't ask us to devalue what we are offering. But again, it starts with our ability to communicate that value. So thank you all. We're just on time. Thank you for joining us this morning. If this was valuable to you, please put a fire emoji in the chat for us. Just leave us with a couple of five fire emojis, or 10 fire emojis, or smiley faces, or celebrations, or whatever you'd like to put in there. But I'd like you to go out feeling excited about what you took away from this. Thank you. I like the rocket taking off for your business too. Fire emojis, and we're taking off. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all next week in the Keep More Corporate Clients Challenge. Thank you all. I'll hang around for a few minutes just in case anybody has any questions, but we appreciate you having joined us today. Yes, and Wendy says, please tell others about the challenge. Please share the link that she dropped in chat. Anybody that you know who can benefit from it, and remind them they don't have to be there every day. They should if they can, but they don't have to be there every day. But if they can make several days and watch the videos, they'll still benefit from it. Thank you. Hope to see you next week.